Welcome, everybody, to Product Led Growth Leaders. And I have a very exciting guest today. He has a long history of strategy, consulting, VP, Chief Strategy Officer. He's been an investor at many different firms. He currently is an advisor for SaaS products. He's a speaker, a book author, and an all around expert at go to market motion and PLG. And he was the really good closing keynote speech at the recent PLGTM conference in the Bay Area a few weeks ago. And that's how I connected with him. So, David Boyce, thank you for being here.
Thomas, so good to see you. I love your energy,
Like,
man. Let's have
likewise,
some fun.
likewise. Yeah, let's have fun. So let's start off by telling folks about. So I want to start off with telling folks a little bit about your book, and then we can circle back to that at the end. But I think that a lot
Yeah,
of the information, your ideas, will be
yeah,
that's from that. So tell us a little bit about that.
yeah, cool. I've been working on, I spent about a year researching and about a year writing a book. We just got it. We signed a deal with Stanford Business Press, and then they're going to take about a year. And then Richard at Stanford said, look, it will be perfect, but it does take us some time. So it's in revision. I submitted the manuscript last week. It's like 400 pages. I interviewed a bunch of growth leaders, people who have built from the ground up with PLG, people who had an existing company over $100 million and then built PLG into that company. I want to take it from both angles. And the real audience here is, hey, for those of us not in the cool kids club, what is PLG? How does it work? Would it apply to me? Could I do it in a traditional business? Could I do it in a software business, a technology business, or even a not traditionally technology business? What does that look like and what's the future? And then the center chapters really are the mechanics of how do you go about building that in, even if you're already an existing mature company.
Awesome. You have a lot of exposure to the world of companies at different stages, and you walk through a little bit of that there, go to market and growth stages. So I want to pick your brain about some of these things. What does the PLG landscape look like today, if you could describe it in terms of where companies are, what they're trying to do, their level of awareness of different PLG strategies and tactics?
Yeah.
How would you describe that?
It's so crazy. Like 2 years ago when I set out to do this, I was like, oh, I'm sure the book's been written. It hasn't. I'm sure the class has been taught. It hasn't. I called Brigham Young University where I'm on the faculty and I said, hey, could I teach a class on PLG? They're like, okay, cool. What does that stand for? I went to my fellow board members at Forrester and said, hey, I'm thinking of going all in on PLG. Cool. What does that stand for? I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? So look, there are 40 public companies that built PLG, multi-billion dollar public companies that built PLG. The biggest being worth $90 billion all the way down to a few $1 billion. There of the Forbes 100 private software companies, so the 100 kind of hottest cloud-based companies, 72 of them have a legitimate PLG motion. So 72 out of 100 of the up and coming cloud companies, 72%, 40 already public companies, and nobody's really kind of document. There are a lot of really smart people with Substacks and blogs and advisory services, but no one's really pulled that together for the masses. You ask what's the environment? It is it is a huge value creator in a world where the cost of acquiring one net new dollar of ARR has gone from $1.50 for $1 of net new ARR to $2.64 for $1 of net new ARR. We need a better way of getting and keeping and expanding revenue that's more efficient. And so, what is that going to be? One of the possibilities is product-led growth. Let's hire the product to do some of the tasks that humans did. Let's take advantage of the industrial revolution of software where actually machines can step in and humans can click up. Like we don't need humans to write contracts. We don't need humans to chase signatures. We don't need humans to describe what a product does. The product can demo itself, the product can sell itself, the product can expand itself, and then we humans can be the consultants on top of that help you understand how to get value out of the product.
Yes, we're always talking about on this show and people trying to achieve PLG, the revolution of achieving PLG as the vendor. But I like this kind of spin of perspective that you're talking about here, that companies in general, they revolutionize themselves and they're by just buying a slice of a semi-automated process where you can have leverage the technology to do these things. Do you think that will have an increased, I guess it will, an increased awareness over time where more and more companies have a bigger number of slices in terms of their internal functions being PLG products that they buy?
Okay, so you're talking about a company buying a
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
self-service?
yeah, yeah. That's what I was catching from what you were saying is that even the buyer's side that they're
Yeah.
revolutionizing the way they're even doing
Yeah,
business
it comes
by
from both
having that
sides.
available.
Comes from both sides. Think about your personal life, like how much of the software that you use in your personal life, probably the software you're using to record this webinar, the software you use to send out emails, the software you use to host a website, the software you use to design templates. How many of those were sold to you by a human? Probably zero. How many of those
Right.
were implemented with assistance from a human? Probably zero. You self-served your way into all of that, and that's because those products were all built in a way that you want to interact with them. Now, at some point, you might raise your hand and say, "Hey, I need some help. I can't figure this thing out." That's fine. But most of those experiences, even in B2B, are self-service, and part of it benefits the provider of the software because now the provider of the software doesn't have to hire the salesperson that talks to you, doesn't have to hire the customer success person that talks to you, the onboarding experience, the trainer, nothing, because they just programmed it all into this product. Cool. But part of it benefits you because you don't actually have time to schedule calls with salespeople and implementers and customer success people. If the product's easy enough to use, you'd rather just get out of the gates and go. So we're coming at it from both angles. I do think it is an industrial revolution of sorts because think about these tasks that humans used to do, selling, renewing, expanding, implementing, configuring, training, are being handed off to machines, meaning the products themselves. The products can do those for us now. So now instead of picking cotton, we're going to have machines pick the cotton. Now instead of digging ditches, we're going to have machines dig the ditches. Now instead of plowing fields, we're going to have machines plow the fields. Okay, cool. Great. So then what do I do as a human? I used to be a software salesperson. Oh, that's easy. You're going to be a consultant now. You're going to help your customers succeed with that product that they just bought instead of just helping them buy it.
Yeah, awesome. And so one of the things you talked about in your talk was revenue architecture and the growth formula and the GTM model. What are some of the things that we should be aware of and thinking about there? And you don't have to give away too much if it's broken down in your book, but
Oh, I'll give it all away. I don't care. Come to my Substack at productledgtm.com and we give it all away there. No problem at all. So let's say I'm building a software company and I work mostly with software companies and I need to figure out how to grow. There are certain patterns for what I need to do and in what order. First, I need to build a product. Then I need to get some basic pricing in place. Then I need to iterate towards product market fit, meaning I've got to make sure that this product is actually something that the market needs, which is going to be measured in a certain way, which we could talk about probably beyond the scope of this conversation. I'm going to try to figure out how to get that to market first through probably founder-led sales and then through some repeatable processes I'm going to try to program into my company so that I can do more of the same and get scales. Then I got to get to unit economics that work for me. So the repeatable processes get me volume, but do they get me volume at a cost that's acceptable to me? If I'm paying $10 for every $1 of new sales, that's not tenable. So I got to get go-to-market fit, which means repeatable processes also at favorable unit economics. And then there's a whole bunch of other stages that go beyond that. But there's a certain path that I'm going to build. I need to understand how that is going to translate into growth for me. And it gets technical, Thomas, but basically, how much money am I going to spend on which processes in order to get which types of customers, which will then stick with me for how long, renew at what likelihood, and expand in what quantity. Those are just basic kind of math things. So once I get past product market fit, I'm moving into go to market fit. I can build what you refer to as a growth formula. And that growth formula is all the things that it takes to get one customer, and then all the things that happen once I have that one customer, what I have to pay to get all of those processes to execute, and what I'm going to get in return in terms of revenue when all of those processes execute. Okay, cool. Like we said before, am I spending $1 to get $1 recurring revenue? That'd be pretty good because then that customer is going to stay for year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, depending on my renewal rate. Cool. So now all of a sudden it's $5. I spent $1 to get $5, but I'm going to spend money to take care of them along the way. And they're also going to expand along the way. So if I can plot out all that math and the unit economics look good, then the question is scaling. Then it's okay, that's working. Let me throw money at that. Let me fund exactly that thing. For some target customers, I can afford to deploy humans. If my average contract value is $100,000, I could probably sell it using a human sales force. If my average contract value is $5,000, annual contract value is $5,000, I probably can't afford to spend much human time, if any, on it. And if it's $1,000, forget about it. Like that needs to be a PLG motion. So when I'm building this kind of architecture, this revenue architecture, the term that you brought up out, I'm going to be really deliberate about that. I'm going to do my high human touch motions for one segment of the market, my medium human touch motions for another segment of the market, and my no touch or low touch motions for another segment of the market. And I can't do it all at once. So I'll start with one of those, I'll optimize it, and I'll get it up to a certain point. I'll add another one, I'll optimize it, I'll get it up to a certain point. And that's what we refer to as revenue architecture.
This is really interesting because when we think about the balance between SLG and PLG, and that was a reoccurring theme throughout the conference, from what you're saying is that we can be informed objectively with this formula. I'm always almost picturing a dashboard, like a sales dashboard, where you've got the stuff plugged in, the metrics plugged in, and you can see how you're doing across the board on this.
Yeah, you would be shocked. Maybe you wouldn't. It seems so simple. If we owned a factory, we would know how much inventory we buy. We would know how many people we pay. We would know how many steps are on the assembly line. We would know what the ultimate cost of the object, the per unit cost of the objects are at the other end. We'd know all of that stuff. We'd know what our quality rates were, and we would probably be tracking it on a dashboard. And some of the steps would be performed by robots, and some of the steps would be performed by humans. Perfect. And we've got ISO standards, and we operate to 5 nines of quality in a factory. In revenue production, you say, hey, I can imagine that would be on a dashboard, like we would know what's happening. So infrequently is that true. We've got marketing doing their thing over here, then we've got sales doing their thing here, then we've got onboarding and customer success doing their thing here, and then we've got account management doing their thing here. Are they all speaking the same language? Are all of their results reconciling to a single version of the truth, single data model, single growth model? In almost no cases is that true. In the cases where it is true, companies do really well and they have scalable and durable growth through IPO and beyond. But I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, you go into a company and marketing's running their program, sales running their program, CS is running their program, and they don't speak the same language, which means they're not communicating and they don't reconcile into a single version of the truth.
Yes, that just hits my observations on so many levels. That's everything you said was very true. And so in your talk, touching on what you just talked about, the manufacturing industry, you used some analogies with car manufacturing. What are some of the lessons that you think that we should be taking from the manufacturing industry and thinking about if we're making digital products?
So it's so inspiring. It was really fun to go back and do that research. Manufacturing went from craft manufacturing, where the output depended on the skills of the individual worker, to mass manufacturing, where kind of process and automation allowed us to crank out a lot of the same product, to lean manufacturing. And lean manufacturing has basically taken over the world of manufacturing. It operates on certain principles, ones that could really help us. And we have all three types of manufacturing today. We looked at the cars, the Aston Martin, the DB11, there are 3,000 of those produced a year. That's craft manufacturing. All parts everything's hand assembled. It's like a piece of art. The BMW 3 Series, that's 3,000 units a year. Some things are hand assembled. That's more mass manufacturing. And the Toyota Corolla, 30,000 units a year. And they can produce the Toyota Corolla at $30,000. It's really inspiring. And we should be able to build our revenue production in a similar way. Lean manufacturing has gotten to 5 nines of quality, meaning only one defect in every 10,000 units. We're nowhere close to that. We're nowhere close to that. But part of it is because we don't speak the same language. We don't have the same methodologies. Our silos are still too separated and defined. So part of kind of the vision, I think, for this industry needs to be that we start speaking the same language. And we've been all called to task by the recent headwinds in the SaaS market, where buying has slowed down, funding has slowed down. Everyone has become conscious of what it costs to acquire and retain and expand revenue from a customer. So what do we do about it? And I think the answer really is revenue architecture. It's getting deliberate about tracking the processes and the economics for how we acquire, retain, and expand revenue from an individual customer.
Now, when I think about everyone kind of being on the same page and speaking the same language, my mind goes first to product teams, where you often have at least three different players, where one of them is the product person who represents the business interest, another one is the technical lead, and then another would be a design lead. And it sounds we should expand that to include some of these other departments that you mentioned, because I find just having a team that has weekly or biweekly meetings just helps with the getting on the same page.
We don't have to expand it by much. What we do have to do is kind of shift our mentality a little bit for a product team. So we might add a growth marketer to that, and we might add an analyst to that. Okay, great. So now we have 5 people. So a designer, a tech lead, a product lead, a growth marketer, and a designer. Okay, great. But the mindset shift that we want is not, we got to shift from I'm producing an end product, good luck marketing and sales, selling it, to I'm actually optimizing this product for adoption and monetization. So in a product-led growth world, the product team actually thinks about acquisition, activation, monetization, retention, and expansion, and they're outcomes focused, meaning business outcomes focused, not just producing the product focused, but once I ship the product, I'm now tracking whether customers are picking it up. Are they discovering it? And I'm tracking that on a dashboard, and I'm making tweaks to it if my acquisition rate is not what it needs to be to feed my growth formula. Are they activating? They create an account, great, but what was their first experience, one that got them all the way to the point of activating and achieving first impact with my product? Okay, cool. I'm going to keep adjusting it. I'm going to work with my designer to adjust that first-time user experience. I'm going to work with my marketer to make sure that the right prompts and language are in there. And then I'm going to keep doing that until, okay, now I got a good activation rate. Are they converting to a monetized? And it's the exact same thing. So the product team stays in the game, not only through ship, but it's not like ship and forget. It's like ship and learn and adjust and stay in the game. And it's way more fun for a designer. I know you've got a design background. It's way more fun for a designer. It's way more fun for a product leader. Sometimes it's not as fun for a tech leader because they want to move on to the next thing. But if you can get your mindset into, no, we're going for points on the board, not just checking the box, then that software engineer can get really interested as well. It's a mindset shift.
And curious, because you seem like a design thinking kind of person, and designer
I'll take
vibes
that
there.
as a compliment.
Yeah. Do you find yourself on these teams, or do you work with designers? And do you personally meet with these folks often? And What's your
100%.
relationship?
Oh
Okay.
my God. Yeah, like I say, I take that as a compliment. I think we should all be design thinkers as much as we possibly can. But the trick, especially up front when you're conceptualizing a new product, the real thing is I have to get to know and understand and really feel and empathize with who the user of my product is. I really do. I have to spend time with her. So we do things like jobs to be done interviews where we'll just interview a series of humans about jobs that they need to accomplish in their life, like progress that they need to make in a certain area of their life, which we call a job, and then what solution they hired to help them make progress. And that solution could be a product, it could be a service, it could be another human, it could be a set of instructions, a book, whatever. What solution did you hire when you needed to make progress in this area of your life? And we really try to develop empathy with them. And we want to bring a designer along with us and the product person along with us. And then we're going to do that until we start hearing the same things over and over. Empathy is at the very front of any good design process for a product, because then I'm going to come up with a minimum viable set of features that would actually help them make real progress against that job as we understand it. And we're going to test that out. And in a PLG world, we're actually going to give it to them. Like empathy and then generosity. Like those are two words you don't hear in business a lot, but we're going to develop empathy for our end user, and then we're going to build something for them, and then we're going to give it to them. And they're going to say, "Hey, wait, how much do I owe you?" We're going to be like, "Nothing." "When do I pay you?" "Never." That's a business. Yeah, it is. Believe me, because if I can help you make progress against this job to be done over time, you're going to stick with me and you're going to get to a point of usage where upgrading to more capacity, longer storage, better features, whatever, is going to just make total sense to you and you're going to do it. And then I'll bring you along a journey to even maybe a team product or an enterprise product. But it all starts with kind of that design thinking mentality of just really understanding the job to be done.
And that seems to be one of the keys to getting into the cool kids club. And I like that you put it that way because there's so many product leaders that really want to achieve that. And they have great ideas. They're even good visionaries, but it seems to people outside of that so unachievable. What do you think is like maybe a first step? If somebody's a product person, they think they have a good idea, they even have a product, but it's not really in that zone. Is it, how possible is it, and how can they take first steps to going in that direction?
I have a good friend who's a product leader, and he's got a great blog post. So I'm not gonna do it justice, but he's get out of the office, virtually get out of the office. Just the answers are not at your desk. They're not in your spreadsheet. They're not in your Figma or Canva or design platform, Adobe Creative Suite. The answers are not there. The answers are with the end human who's going to be interacting with your product, and you got to meet her. You got to understand her. So what I would say to that product person is, do you know your customer? When did you talk to her last? What does she care about? How does she measure progress in her life? And what about your product is going to help her make progress in her life? And those are really simple questions. And it's embarrassing how often we fail at them because we've been so busy building the reporting dashboard or the security stuff or the integrations, all of which are important for like an enterprise sale, none of which add value to the end user's life. We just got to keep her at the center of our design thinking, or we'll lose our way.
That's awesome. Now, wrapping up, what does Winning by Design do? That's your company. What do you guys do?
Yeah, so Winning by Design does revenue architecture. So we work with scaling SaaS companies to make sure that they've got a deliberate kind of end-to-end view of the customer journey that does in fact resolve into a data model and a growth model and an operating model that are deliberate. We make sure that people are pursuing the right motions for the right segments of the market. Not that we're telling them what to do, we work with them to understand those principles, install those principles. And most of the Winning by Design customers are working their way towards an IPO, kind of $100 million, sometimes two, 300 million. We have 1,200 companies backed up waiting to go IPO right now. And many of those customers are, many of those companies are Winning by Design customers. So they want to make sure when they get on the other side of the IPO, they can continue their growth trajectory, and they know they can't do it if it's been cobbled together. It's got to be deliberately architected.
Nice. And can you mention your book again? Tell us when it's coming out and tell us where people can find you.
Oh, amazing. Thank you, Thomas. So productledgtm.com, that is my Substack. That's the best place to find me. You can find me on LinkedIn, but productledgtm.com is my Substack. I've got all the updates from my book. The working title for the book is Freemium: How Top Companies Use Product-Led Growth to Acquire, Retain, and Expand Customers. It's being published by Stanford, but it won't be out until next year. In the meantime, I post weekly to my Substack, productledgtm.com.
Dave Boyce, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, my friend.